I still remember the day I thought I lost everything. It was a bright Tuesday morning when my cousin called. His voice was tense. "Kene, you need to come now. The land is gone." My heart sank. I grabbed my car keys and left immediately, feeling like the ground beneath my feet had disappeared. This land wasn't just any piece of property. It was the land my father had worked so hard to buy years ago. I grew up hearing him talk about it, saying it was something we could always rely on. He used to tell me, land doesn't get old. It only grows in value. It was supposed to be our safety net, something that could help me and my future family if times ever got tough. But now, it seemed like it had been snatched away. When I got to the site, my chest tightened. A tall, intimidating fence surrounded the land. On it was a large sign that read, "Private property, and no trespassing." Inside the fence, there were construction machines and workers moving around as if they owned the place. My cousin stood there, his face filled with frustration and sadness. "I warned you, Kene. You should have acted on the papers," he said. I felt a wave of guilt and confusion. I knew what he was talking about. The papers my father had given me years ago were in an old drawer at home, untouched for years. They were original documents, but I never thought to update or check them. In my mind, the land was always there. I'd visit it occasionally, but I never worried about someone taking it. After all, how could anyone steal land? The next few hours were a blur. My cousin and I tried to talk to the workers, but they ignored us. They told us to speak to their boss. When we asked who the boss was, they shrugged and pointed to the sign. Frustrated, we left. That evening, I sat in my living room, staring at the old documents. They were yellowed with age and full of legal terms I didn't understand. For years, I had assumed these papers were enough to prove the land was ours. But now, I wasn't so sure. The next morning, I went to a lawyer. I handed him the papers and explained what had happened. He glanced through them, then looked at me and said, "These documents are valid, but they are outdated. You need to update the title and register the land under your name officially. Otherwise, it's easy for someone else to claim it." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. My father's land wasn't properly protected. All this time, I had been so confident it was safe, but I had failed to take the basic steps to secure it. The lawyer explained that many people in growing areas face this problem. Land disputes are common, especially when property values rise. Determined to fix this, I decided to investigate further. I went to the local government office, hoping to find records of the land. After hours of waiting in long lines, I finally met with an officer who checked the system. "The land is still listed under your father's name," he said, "but someone else recently filed new documents claiming ownership." My stomach turned. Who would do such a thing? How could they even get fake documents? The officer told me that in some cases, people bribe officials or forge papers to claim land that doesn't belong to them. It's easier to do this when the original owner's documents are old or incomplete, like mine. For the next few weeks, I felt like I was running in circles. I visited more government offices, spoke to surveyors, and even tried to get help from the local elders. Everyone gave me the same advice: update your documents. But even if I updated them, getting the strangers off the land would be a different battle entirely. Meanwhile, the people who had taken over the land were moving fast. Every time I went back to check, more work had been done. It felt like the land was slipping further away from me with each passing day. I'd stand outside the fence, looking at what was supposed to be mine but now felt completely out of reach. One evening, I sat on my bed feeling utterly defeated. My father had worked so hard to buy that land, and now it felt like I had failed him. It wasn't just about the money or the property, it was about the dream my father had for our family. I didn't want to let that dream disappear. But I also didn't know where to start. Then, I remembered a conversation I had with a friend years ago. He had told me about the importance of land banking, which is buying land and holding onto it while its value grows. Back then, I thought it was just another way of saying, buy land and wait. But now, I realized it was more than that. It wasn't just about buying land, it was about protecting it, managing it, and making sure it's safe from situations like this. That thought sparked something in me. I realized I couldn't sit back and wait for the problem to fix itself. I had to take action. The first step was to secure the land legally. The second step was to figure out how to make sure something like this never happened again. I didn't know it yet, but this experience was about to teach me one of the most valuable lessons about real estate investment. The next day, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let this land slip through my fingers. I gathered all the documents my father had left behind and took them straight to the lawyer again. This time, we went through everything line by line. He explained what each document meant and what I needed to do to strengthen my claim on the land. First, I had to get the land surveyed again. This meant hiring a licensed surveyor to map out the boundaries and make sure the records match what was on the ground. The surveyor spent days measuring and comparing the details with old maps. When he was done, he handed me a new survey plan, a clear and updated document that showed the exact location and size of the land. Next, I had to officially register the land under my name. This process was exhausting. I spent hours at government offices, waiting in long lines and filling out endless forms. At one point, I had to provide proof that my father had bought the land decades ago. Thankfully, I found an old receipt among his belongings. It was faded but readable, and it became the key to proving our ownership. While I was dealing with all this, I also had to handle the people who had taken over the land. My lawyer filed a complaint with the local authorities, and we prepared for court. The court process was slow, but I was determined to see it through. We gathered evidence, including the updated documents, photos of the land, and even testimonies from neighbors who had known my father. In the meantime, I started learning more about real estate. I read articles, watched videos, and even spoke to a few experts. One thing they all said stood out: owning land is only the first step. To truly benefit from it, you have to protect it and make it work for you. After months of back and forth, the court finally ruled in my favor. The strangers who had taken over the land had no legal claim. Their documents were fake, and they had been scammed by someone pretending to sell the land. The court ordered them to leave immediately. The day I saw the construction machines being removed from the land, I felt a mix of relief and pride. I had fought for something important, not just for myself but for my family's future. But I also knew that this was just the beginning. I didn't want the land to sit idle anymore. I started thinking about how to make it more valuable. That's when I remembered what my friend had said about land banking. It wasn't enough to just own the land, I needed to invest in it. I decided to build something small but useful, a set of rental apartments. I partnered with a local construction company, and together, we designed a simple plan that fit my budget. Over the next year, we built 6 apartments on the land. It wasn't easy, but every step felt like progress. When the apartments were finished, I rented them out. The rent I earned each month was more than I had expected. For the first time, I understood the true value of real estate investment. This wasn't just about owning land, it was about creating something that could provide steady income for years to come. Looking back, losing the land temporarily was a wake-up call. It taught me the importance of securing what you own and planning for the future. Real estate investment isn't just about buying property, it's about protecting it, growing its value, and making it work for you. That land, which once felt like a burden, has now become a source of financial security. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: don't wait for things to fall apart before taking action. Whether it's land, property, or any other investment, take the time to understand it and protect it. Because when done right, real estate investment can change your life. The experience opened my eyes to how important it is to stay informed and proactive. It's not just about holding on to what you own but making it grow. Now, every time I visit the apartment or meet with tenants, I feel a sense of pride, not just because I fought to keep the land, but because I turned it into something meaningful. I share this story because I know many people might find themselves in situations like mine. It's easy to overlook the little things, like updating documents or checking on your investments. But those little things can make all the difference. Real estate investment is more than just buying land or property. It's about taking care of it, improving it, and making it work for you. And when done the right way, it can secure not just your future but your family's future too.